The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and she bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee in the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. It was about 30 years ago when I attended a large church in Minnesota with my parents and my two older brothers. We were just one of many families in this congregation, many families who attended worship, Sunday school, and confirmation classes. I think I remember some of the names of a couple of the kids and adults, but to be honest, I'm not really sure if in that huge congregation anyone really knew my name. My family had never seen any of those little rooms off the sanctuary where the important people gathered to prepare for worship, and we had never stepped foot in the chancel area where the pastors stood. We were never asked to help with anything, and no one approached us after worship. We just greeted the pastor as we left, and then got in the car. It was a nice place. There were nice people, and I don't blame anyone for our experience. But we definitely didn't feel like we fit there, or belonged there, or were part of the crowd. We felt like outsiders. Yep, I know what it's like to feel like an outsider in a church. Even in my first call for the first year or so, most people didn't even say hello when we would cross paths on Sunday mornings. But I ended up staying there for almost 12 years and got to know so many people, and eventually it did feel like home. Sometimes it just takes time. But sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes you just need to feel welcomed and safe and accepted now. Sometimes you are feeling empty and lonely and just yearn to experience God's presence in the faces and the sounds and the feeling of church. The woman in our gospel story today definitely needed Jesus now and not a minute later. Her daughter was possessed and could easily harm herself or others, and their home was no longer safe. She was no doubt in need now. But she was an outsider. You see, to the crowd that was following Jesus, she was a no-name, an unfamiliar face, the wrong ethnicity, accent, religion, nationality, let alone the wrong gender. So when she showed up, she felt this huge wall of despair and separation between herself and Jesus. But what she may not have realized at the time is that Jesus was an outsider too. First of all, he's on the outside of the boundaries of his Galilean ministry. He is way up north in the region of Tyre and Sidon, and we may wonder, what's he doing up there? Second, he is on the Gentile side, the side where Jewish mothers wanted their little boys to stay away from. Why would he be there? Third, he is by no way, shape, or form a conventional Jewish rabbi or man. He is an outsider, just like her. But the difference between the two of them is that he is an outsider by choice. He has expanded the boundaries of his ministry beyond the Galilean intentionally with precise purpose to make it known that both Jew and Gentile are welcome and are included in God's big kingdom. Yes, I know his words to her aren't exactly the most welcoming. I don't like his tone either. But it is his actions that speak the loudest in this scenario. By expanding his travels, meeting new people, learning new ways, getting out of his comfort zone, he is expressing that all of those who also feel like outsiders are welcome, that God's kingdom is a lot bigger than they may realize. J.B. Phillips, a preacher and theologian, wrote a book called Your God is Too Small. In it, he challenged the readers to broaden their understanding of who God is and what God is about in reconciling the world to himself through Jesus Christ. I think we can all be a little guilty of making our God the size that feels comfortable to us, especially if we are an insider. But just imagine what would have happened if Jesus were an insider. He may not have helped this woman's daughter. Just imagine all the miracles and the healings and the forgiveness, grace, peace, joy, hope, and love that Jesus spread throughout the earth that would not have been possible if Jesus was an insider. But thanks be to God, Jesus is an outsider, and he chose to become an outsider for our salvation so that the weakest and the most vulnerable around us would no longer be viewed as outsiders or outcasts, but as a part of the family of God. So how does this impact our life and our faith and our ministry? Could it be that we are called to identify our own situation and then adjust accordingly? For example, if we realize we are one of the in crowd, how can we expand it? How can we reach out to those who are on the outside? I know this may sound cliche, kind of like we're in high school back at the lunch table, but I think sometimes we lose sight of which lunch table of life, or at least this season of our life, that we are sitting at. Are we at the popular table? Or at least a table of good friends? Or on the other hand, if we realize that we are the ones that are sitting by ourselves, and we are the ones that feel like an outsider, maybe we need to first and foremost let it sink in that we are an important important part of God's kingdom, and we are a beloved child of God. And then from that source of strength, be open and vulnerable to reaching out and getting to know new people, other people who may or may not also be or feel like an outsider. Now, I want you to know, no matter where you are at, what table you are sitting at, you are an important part of the family of God here at Living Water. We love you so much. You matter. You have a wonderful presence here, and we want you to know that. Whether it is in person or it's on virtual, you make a difference. May you never feel like you don't belong here. May you never feel like an outsider looking in. And may you be blessed to be a blessing to those in your life who may not feel included or welcomed. You are doing important kingdom work. Amen.